So put your hands out like this here. Clasp your hands together and interlock your fingers tight, tight, tight.
Looks like we're off to a good start. So we've got 2 people ready to be hypnotized, just like last week's video. In last week's video, we had 2 people, but only one went into hypnosis, and I explained some of the reasons why that might be. You can check that video out later. I'll put the link to that in the end screens. But who's going to go in hypnosis this week? Both of them? One of them? The boy? The girl? Who knows? You're going to have to watch. Usually after I've uploaded a video to YouTube, I think to myself, there was one more point I wanted to stress in connection with that video. I always upload a street hypnosis clip and then give you some tutorial breakdown discussion around that clip. And last week there were 2 people, and slight spoiler alert, only one of them went into hypnosis. You're going to have to watch the video and find out. Check it out after this. I'll leave a link in the end screens to last week's video. But I said in that video that in a street hypnosis setting, sometimes people don't go into hypnosis. And I give some tutorial breakdown around that. Now, I emphasize the street hypnosis setting because in the therapeutic setting, things are different. Now, how can they be different when I'm always saying that the hypnosis is the same, whether you're doing therapy or whether you're doing street hypnosis, whether you're doing stage hypnosis, the hypnosis part is the same. And that is true. So isn't there a contradiction there? Can't, people feel to go into hypnosis in a therapeutic setting? I'm going to explain why in the tutorial section today, but let's watch this lovely little street hypnosis clip first and then come back. We'll talk about that clip and explain exactly what I mean. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, make sure you give it a like, and don't forget, click the big red subscribe button and that bell notification button so you get notified when there's a new video out from myself. And if you have any comments about this video or any video, please leave it in the comment section below. I love reading your comments. I love responding to your comments and connecting with you guys. So please do leave a comment in the comment section below. But enough of all that, let's watch the video. So, would you like to be hypnotized?
Yes.
And you're happy to be hypnotized? Take your backpack off just so it's easier. Okay, so we're going to start with just a little, what we call a suggestibility exercise to see how good you are at hypnosis and following instructions. So put your hands out like this here. Clasp your hands together and interlock your fingers tight, tight, tight. Okay? Now bend your elbows like you're going to say a prayer. Now, in a moment, not yet, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to put your 2 index fingers up like this here, about an inch apart. And when I do, I'm going to ask you to just use your imagination to imagine the tips of those fingers are little magnets. Think you can do that? Just to see how good your imagination is. So 1, 2, 3, fingers up in the air. Imagine those fingers are magnets and tugging and pulling and pulling and tugging and pulling together. Tugging and pulling together, that's right. Feel those magnets pulling together, and in a moment those fingers will touch. There you go. And that shows you how you have a good imagination. Okay? So step 2, put your hands out like this here. Okay, fingers nice and tight together. Perfect, perfect, perfect space apart. And I want you to stare at my finger right between your 2 palms. Stare at my finger, but what I want you to do now is close your eyes and just imagine that finger is still there. Imagine that finger still there between your palms. And as you do that, imagine now that there's very strong magnets in the palms of your hands, just like those little magnets in your tips of your fingers. Imagine there's very strong magnets in the palms of your hands. And I click my fingers, notice how those magnets start pulling together. Tugging and pulling and pulling and tugging and pulling together. And in a moment those hands are going to touch together. And when they do, feel the palms pulling together just as much as the fingers touch together. Feel those palms tugging and pulling together. Feel those palms getting really stuck together. Feel those magnets being so strong, those palms stuck together just as much as those fingers are stuck together. And in a minute I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And when I count from 1 to 5, on the count of 5 I'm going to ask you, only then will I ask you to try and pull those hands apart. But when I do, the more you try to pull those hands apart, the more those hands lock and stick together. So 1, feeling those hands really lock and stick together. 2, like they're super glued, poured between the 2 hands. 3, like they're tied together with rope. 4, really cemented and glued stuck. Really almost as if they're carved from a single piece of wood. Just one single piece of wood. And 5, go ahead now and try and pull those hands apart. The more you try, the more those hands stick together, because you're in hypnosis already. And your legs will support you and your back will support you. When I say the word sleep, way down, deeper, deeper, deeper relaxed. The deeper you go, the more relaxed you feel. The more relaxed you feel, the deeper you go, drifting, sinking down. And when I drop those hands down by your legs, just go 10 times deeper. Legs supporting you, back supporting you, just go down even deeper still. And in a minute, I'm going to count from 10 down to 1. With every count I count, just allow your unconscious mind now to go even deeper. So 10, letting all the sounds around you help to absorb you into this wonderful feeling of hypnosis. 9, doubling that relaxation. 8, even deeper, even more relaxed. 7, 6, 10 times deeper, letting the breezes blowing through you help to absorb you once again even deeper inside now. By the time I get to the number 1, your unconscious will want to do everything I say. So 3 and 2, so deep, so relaxed, so comfortable in this position, and 1, way down, way down. In a minute I'm going to count from 1 to 3, and the count of 3 you can open your eyes and go back with us. But every time I say the word sleep or deeper sleep, your head will drop down into your chest, your eyes will close, and you'll double the feeling that you have right now, going even deeper still. Nod your head that you understand. So 1, 2, 3, open your eyes.
No, I just know I don't want to break.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah. No.
And watch my hand and sleep now. Way down. Deeper, deeper, deeper relaxed. The deeper you go, the more relaxed you feel. The more relaxed you feel, the deeper you go. In a minute, I'm going to count from 1 to 3. And the count of 3, you're going to open your eyes and be back with us. This time, you're going to feel so relaxed, so comfortable in the position you're in now. It's like your legs just do not move. Your feet are cemented to that grass, glued like your tree trunks going through that soil right into the ground. You cannot move your feet. The more you try and move those feet, the more those feet lock and stick to the ground. Nod your head that you understand. You will not be able to move your feet. And the more you try, the more they stick. 1, 2, 3, open your eyes. Feeling good? Go ahead now and try and move those feet. Really try. Really try. The harder you try, the harder they stick. The harder you try, the harder they stick.
I'm terrified.
The harder you try, really try. You can even lean on each other to try and lift up, but you cannot lift up. The harder you try, the harder they stick. Really stuck. Isn't this cool?
Yeah.
And that's the power of hypnosis. Watch my hand and sleep now. Way down. Deeper, deeper, deeper relaxed.
Well, this week, both of them went into hypnosis beautifully. So what was the difference? Well, let's take a step back and look at the various aspects of these two people. First of all, I approach them and say, would you like to be hypnotized? And they go, yeah, they're excited. Now, there may be a possible red flag with the girl because she's sort of looking around at the start. She's slightly nervous looking at the start. But again, I always say that you've got to keep going. You've got to build that rapport. You've got to build that confidence between you and the person you're hypnotizing, or the people you're hypnotizing in this case. And notice how, as I ask them to do things, as I move into the magnetic hand, or magnetic fingers is the first thing I do, is a suggestibility exercise. Now, notice how I call it a suggestibility exercise. You'll hear some people call it a suggestibility test, but really there's no pass or fail around this. This is just a gauge to check how much imagination these people have, and I can actually have used this as an induction in the past as well, but in this situation I'm just using it as an exercise to get these two lovely people warmed up. So I'm asking them to clasp their hands together, bend their elbows. Every time I'm asking them to do something, I'm measuring how quickly, how responsively they respond to my requests. And when I ask them to imagine that their fingers are magnets, notice how their fingers come together beautifully. So they both perform the magnetic fingers exercise with flying colours. They respond beautifully, their fingers come together nicely. Now, I could have moved straight into an induction with that, as I say, but in this situation I say just let your hands loose and we'll move on to the next thing. And I again ask them to respond by putting their hands out. Now, lots of nice things in this magnetic hands. If you notice right away, the guy's hands are almost starting to pull together before I've told him his hands are magnets. It's almost as if he's imagining what he was doing with his fingers and the magnetic fingers pulling together for his hands. I move on to just tap his hands, tell him to close their eyes down. Do you need to close your eyes down? I've done this in the past where I've forgotten to tell people to close their eyes and it still worked beautifully. So you don't need eye closure, but it just adds to the focus of attention on their hands if they're not looking around at anything that's happening in the background behind me or in front of them, as it were. In terms of the girl, I had to say, every time I click my fingers, your hands will pull together, and nothing really happens with her hands until I do click my fingers. But as soon as I click my fingers, you see those hands moving together nicely. So both people are engaging their imagination wonderfully. Now, after a while, the hands are getting together. I say, I'm going to count from 1 to 5, and they're getting more stuck together, more bound together, like they're carved from a single piece of wood. I really emphasize their hands are stuck together, and I give them that sense of anticipation. I say, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to try and pull them apart, but not yet. In a moment. That gives them time to really imagine what it would be like for their hands to be stuck together. It's a very powerful hypnotic language pattern to say in a moment, to just give them space to really think about what's going to happen next. At one point in time, you see that the guy's hands are not fully together, and as you see here, I just gently press them together and they just move more tightly together. Never be afraid to give a non-verbal suggestion, a physical suggestion, by tapping the hands to give them a suggestion as to what you want to happen with their hands. One of the key skills when you're working with more than one person is the fact that the chances are both sets of hands will not come together at the same time, as you saw in this situation. So while I'm describing how the hands are sticking together and the palms are pulling together just as much as the fingers are pulling together, for the guy, the girl's hands haven't even touched yet. So it can be quite a juggle to craft the language in such a way that both gain an equal experience. So I'm pacing out that even though her hands haven't come together, I'm giving that a suggestion, as with the in a moment situation of building a sense of anticipation. While his hands are actually feeling it in that moment, hers will in a moment feel that fingers and palms pulling together. So always keep that in mind, that when you're working with two people, they're not going to be simultaneously doing the same things. Once they find they can't pull their hands apart, I say, well, you're in hypnosis now. You might as well tell them. And at that point, I just give them a little pull on the arms, very light tap on the arms almost, just to put them into hypnosis. And I say, sleep, and look how well they flop down. They really are really relaxed going into that hypnotic state. I do a little countdown just to really deepen that trance by going 10 down to 1, and then I do a little fractionization. This is the process of waking them up and then saying sleep again and dropping them back down again. Once that's done, we move into the first skit, and as always, I like to do the little foot stuck just to give them a quick sense of catalepsy in their feet. I tell them their feet cannot move. And they are wonderful subjects. They wake up, they can't move their feet. They can see them really struggling to move their feet. Now the guy says, I'm terrified, but he says that with a light-hearted giggle, as it were. Always be mindful of not freaking people out or giving them a bad experience. But you can tell, even though he's saying, I'm terrified, he's going, I'm terrified. So I'm always calibrating that to make sure they are in a good state of mind. And I'm so happy that neither of them can move their feet. I go on to the extent of saying lean on each other and try and push off each other. And even within that, their mind acts accordingly not to be able to move their feet. So they're now pushing off each other. That almost gives you that sense of, going to the next stage of trying to move, but their brains are coordinating with each other not to brace on each other. Again, almost an advanced level of suggestion there that they cannot move from the spot because their unconscious mind has engaged with that imagination fully and they have accepted the suggestions. So these two went into hypnosis a lot better than, one of the last week's set. So what was different? Well, again, as I said last week, there is no magic formula. We can't mind read, we can't look inside someone's head and say, oh, these guys are engaging their imagination better than the other guys. So it's just about engaging the imagination. You've just got to give them a rich experience, describe it in the best way you can, and it really is down to them accepting those suggestions, engaging with their imagination. So I said at the start of this video that I would talk about the difference between street hypnosis and therapeutic hypnosis. I always say that the hypnosis side of both street and therapy is the same hypnosis. So why can, in a street setting, people not engage in their imagination? Well, it's basically down to timing. In a street hypnosis situation, you want to move things along swiftly. You're not just hypnotizing one person, but you've got an audience. It might be just one friend, it might be 2 or 3 friends, it might be a small crowd, but you've got an audience and you've got a subject, and you're trying to keep things moving along at a pace. So if something doesn't work, you don't want to say, let's try another induction, let's try a third induction, let's try a fourth induction. Now, sometimes I will do that if I can do it very smoothly and very quickly, but being quick and being smooth is all part of street hypnosis. In a therapeutic setting where someone has come and you've got that time frame, you've got an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how long the session is, to really work with the person, understand the best way they're going to go into hypnosis. And if something doesn't work, you move on quickly, move on smoothly. In most situations, without that person even knowing, I've swapped from one induction to another until you find the right induction. So we'll always find the perfect induction. We'll always get that person into hypnosis because there is no audience. It's just me and them, and we're working together to make sure this hypnosis works, to make sure we get through the situation where we can help overcome the anxiety, overcome the fear, whatever it is we're working on. That's the difference in therapeutic hypnosis compared to street hypnosis. So it's just about timing. You want to be smooth, you want to be quick, and if something doesn't work, rather than leaving the audience bored by saying just you sit there for 5 minutes while I find the right induction for this person, I'm just going to say, well, maybe today's not the right day. So that really is the key difference. It's having the comfort of time and one-to-one working with an individual when you're in a therapeutic setting that will make sure that the hypnosis will work, be it slightly longer than in a street hypnosis setting. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you like this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up, make sure you give it a like, and don't forget, click that big red subscribe button, and don't forget the bell notification next to that subscribe button so you get notified every time there's a new video coming out from myself. And if you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comment section below. I've been promising you all the way through this video that you can watch this video next. This is last week's video, which, just like this video, had 2 people being hypnotized. But in last week's video, one of those 2, can you tell from the thumbnail? One of them didn't go into hypnosis.